So when I was looking at your essential components for instruction, I thought maybe we could, talk a little bit more about some of the components of it. So tell me a little bit about the standards that you're addressing, and maybe where those standards are coming from.
Okay, so my standards are from the California State Board of Education for dance, pulled from like a proficient or advanced level. This is more proficient. They're intermediate level dancers. And so my four main focuses are the development of motor skills and technical expertise, comprehension and analysis of dance elements, development of dance vocabulary, and connections and applications across disciplines.
Good.
So those are my four main focus standards.
And before we talk about how you're going to address those standards, what kind of pre-assessments have you done or are you thinking of doing for?
Probably the best assessment for me is always going to be my dance evaluation rubric. Dance can be very subjective. It's an artistic art form, but I still want to put a quantitative assessment to them, know where they're standing, see if there's a weakness across the board for all my students or if there's a certain group I should focus on. And so that's kind of my first and foremost assessment of where my students fall as dancers in the classroom level-wise.
Can you talk about some of the results from the pre-assessment that you did?
I saw that for this class that foot mechanics and articulation was a little lower than I would like. And I think that's a huge issue. When the students are jumping, they're not grounding their heels, so they're more likely to roll an ankle or damage themselves. So that was a little lower than I would have liked it across the board. And so I'm trying to focus on that because in dance in general, jumping is a huge part of it. And being able to do it safely is extremely important to prolong, their life as a dancer. When the body no longer works, then they're limited to how long they can perform. So I saw that. Also, I would like to see a little bit more turnout and hip rotation. Dancers, they turn out because it gives a visual longer line to the body, but I need to make sure they're doing it safely without damaging the hips. They need to work their natural turnout because if they force it, they're hurting their knee joints and ankle joints. And so that's another area where I really wanted to just really focus on and make sure that I'm putting all my students at a good level.
Okay, and so you say you're going to focus on that. How are you going to assess that? What's the summative assessment going to look like? How are you going to know that they know those things?
A couple ways. I've done a beginning year assessment, and then I will rescore them and be able to see if I see improvement or not. I will also give them a theory test where they'll look at pictures of dancers and they finished a jump and they can tell me if it's correct or incorrect. And if it's incorrect, what is going on? Is it, are their heels lifting? Are they sickling? Are they forcing their turnout? That way, not only do I know they know how to execute it, but they can think about it and articulate it to me.
So as far as progress monitoring, looking at your inquiry question and the technical things that you just discussed, how are you going to be looking at those along the way?
A lot of it will be through just viewing them and then discussing it. So if I give a new jump combination and the students are still not grounding their heels, I need to stop class. We need to take a moment. We need to go back to the process of using your plie, like after a jump, absorbing into the ground. And when those heels are popped, what are we affecting? We're creating a large force into the Achilles tendon and, up through that leg. And how important it is to really get those heels, discuss the muscles, why are we doing this and what are we protecting, and making sure they understand the anatomy of it. Another way I want to assess them is through videotaping them, allowing them to see themselves, and then hopefully through watching themselves they can find some of those mistakes and discuss how they can fix them. And not only that, but tell me what could happen if they don't address some of their technical mistakes. So I want them to take some ownership of their training.
Nice.
So,
well, it looks like you have the essential components of instruction down.
Thanks.
Good job. So I'm interested about your focus student selection. What students did you identify as your focus students?
I did a couple things. First, I looked at their evaluation rubric, and I looked at my students that are struggling the most. And then after the start of the school year, I found one student that is redesignated EL student, and she's transitioned out of ELL, but she struggles technically, but my big concern is that a lot of dance terminology is in French, and then we translate it into English, and just making sure that I support that enough. And one thing I've tried to do is make sure that I have pictures with the French, with the English, and the movement, so that she can connect it back to what we're doing into class and make those connections, and she has a stronger understanding of what we're doing.
And then how about your other one?
My second student, she is on a 504. She has dyslexia. She definitely is lacking in technique. She works really hard in class, but when it comes to getting her work done and completing it outside written projects and her tests, she's not always so successful. So trying to be there, support her. I know she has a tutor after school, providing the right materials so that her tutor can help her study. I really have to be on top of any written test I give, making sure I can find a quiet place for her, that I get a conference room reserved, and she's able to have more time for her tests. But my last student, she has not met them. She's very low.
So she was challenging, would you say?
Yeah. At the beginning of the year, I really felt like she didn't care to be there. Mm-hmm. She gave up very easily. She hasn't shown much improvement. She's easily discouraged. I'm trying to be there to correct her and give her feedback, but it almost feels like she's giving up. So at the end of the semester, the teachers got together as a group to collaborate, and we pick a few students that we see across the board are struggling. And I suggested her, and I found there was a trend throughout her classes, and we sat down for an SST with her parents. What I've done so far for her is paired her with a very kind advanced student that can quietly be there to help her. I think it's very intimidating when I correct her in front of the class, which by intermediate level you would hope they'd get over that, but she has some circumstances that make her a little bit different. It's encouraging to me to know that she really wants to be there and loves the class. It's just she
has some barriers to overcome.
Yeah, some huge barriers to overcome. And it makes me very proud of her. And so I also have asked her to come to office hours because I think she works better one-on-one. And she's doing better. She's still not meeting them, but we're working through it. And now that I have a better understanding of why she gives up so easily, it's not that she's quitting. It's almost like a panic attack.
Wow. It looks like you really utilized a lot of resources to help your students, so it's really great.
Thanks.
So I'm going to be watching one of your lessons today in your lesson series. Can you tell me a little bit about what I'm going to be seeing?
Okay, so today's class, it's going to be kind of a jump focused, so saute focused lesson where I want my students to focus on every time they jump, grounding their heels, protecting their body, thinking about how they're using the different muscles, making sure their energy is going into the floor and not into their Achilles tendons. And so everything we do, we're going to kind of focus on that. The beginning of class, of course, they're going to have to warm up. There's no way to not have them warm up. They really need to prepare their bodies. Jumping is extremely hard on the body, and it's cold outside, so they'll go through a normal warm-up, and you'll see them work through their stretches, their conditioning, just really, preparing their instrument as much as possible. After that, they'll do their basic turns, and even in their turning, we'll still continue to discuss grounding that heel, pulling up, how to use their body, wrapping those muscles and closing the rib cage up, and then discuss where they might see, are they grounding their heels? If they don't, what's going to happen? What part, what muscle, what tendon might they injure? Discuss that. And then after they've discussed where their weaknesses and strengths are, they can kind of set a plan in motion of how they're going to try to improve that. Is it going to be more bar work, stretching through their plie more so that they have a more elastic plie when they jump so they can absorb the energy, and protect their body. And that way they take ownership of it a little bit. I will constantly give feedback, but I'm finding that My students seem to apply more when they see themselves on video. They really take ownership of the movement. They think they're doing it, and I can say it over and over again when they think they're doing it, but when they see it and they actually realize they're not, they really seem to take ownership of that.
Great.
And that's the class.
So when you were designing this lesson, how did you, what did you do to incorporate different strategies or different methods, or
I think
for
especially
your focus students?
Some of my focus students are intimidated by asking questions in front of the class. That's part of the reason they're struggling, but to get out in front. And I think in the smaller groups, they're going to feel more comfortable.
And is there anything that you want me to focus on, that you want me to look for, that might be helpful?
Trying to think. Just maybe keep an eye on my focus students, making sure, I'm just really trying to keep them involved in the class, not to give up, not to feel discouraged just because they're a little bit behind, and just maybe helping me find other ways that I might be able to do that. I was also hoping that you could pay attention to the academic language that I'm using and how I'm trying to integrate that into the dance curriculum, and let me know how you think it's going, if it's working, if I need, how I can maybe adjust it or apply it in a different way.
And maybe if the students seem that they're understanding.
Yeah, definitely. So.
Okay.